Good morning. I just want to make sure if everyone can hear me. If you can just type in the chat box, just say hello or hi. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day and schedule to join this presentation. And basically, as you saw, the presentation is in regards to studying in Canada. And hopefully the goal is to help anyone who wants to apply as a student to go to Canada. We're going to try to cover multiple aspects. And if we don't, then hopefully we will give you an opportunity to answer or to ask any questions that you may have. And hopefully we will be able to answer all your questions by the end of this presentation. So I recognize it's 10:03 already. So we'll just give, I know there's always latecomers, so we'll just give people 2 more minutes and then we'll actually begin the presentation. Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you guys are ready. We're about to begin the presentation. My name is Muzamil Bilut. I am an officer at the Embassy of Canada here in Riyadh. And generally, I process work permits, study permits, and I've been doing it for almost over a decade now. Hopefully this presentation will answer most, if not all, of your questions. We also want to give you guys the chance to ask any questions that you may have that maybe we didn't think about. So I'll give you guys the opportunity to also ask questions. I'm just going to type a link into the chat box. And if you guys can direct all your questions there, that would be fantastic. Because then it'll be easier for us in one place to look at all your questions. So if you guys click that link, it will take you to the Slido event, Slido section, and you're more than welcome to ask any of your questions there. So we also want to just let you know that this is very much a two-way conversation because we also want to provide you with the information, process of applying, but also we want some of your feedback in terms of what we can do better. So what things we can do improve, what we can do change. So it is a two-way street. So just off the bat, the first thing I'm going to ask you, I'm going to send you a link right now. And this is for just to get an idea of the people that are here, because we understand Saudi Arabia is very diverse. We just want to get an idea of where people are joining us from, what their citizenship is. So I've just added a link. If you click the second link that I've sent, it will just take you to a survey where it tells you, you can say what citizenship you are. So I'll give you a couple of minutes, 2 minutes, just to get to that survey and answer the questions on that link. I just want to see if people, can you guys see the link that I've sent about the citizenship? Can you answer in the chat box if you guys can see the link? Okay, you guys can see it. Perfect. Great. Done. Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, good. Okay, I'm glad. I was just wondering if people can actually see the link or not. Okay, so you guys can hear me properly? Just give me a yes before we actually begin. Yes, perfect. Okay, great. Okay, so I apologize also just in advance in case the we disconnect because the Wi-Fi sometimes is a bit iffy, but hopefully we'll get through this. So let's begin the presentation. So the first thing that I want to tell you about applying is the application process. So the application process, generally what we're doing is you're submitting the documents that we require, and then we're looking at it from an officer's perspective. So when you're preparing, and we will go into each of these in details. So what documents you will require, so things in regards to yourself, your studies, your transcripts, IELTS, and then you have the forms, which are the IRCC forms, the immigration forms. And obviously there's a payment. And after that, we will also require specifics such as biometrics and a medical exam. And then once those are submitted, the documents, the forms, the payments, the biometrics, and the medical exam, if you need a medical exam, then it goes to an officer for a decision. So then it will come to an officer, and the officer will look at all your documentation. They will look at all the forms. They will make sure that the payment was made, and then we will make a final decision on your application. So just for your information, people who are currently residing in Saudi Arabia do not require a medical exam. Okay, so so you might have family overseas who are in maybe India, Pakistan, or the Philippines. They will require a medical exam when they're applying. But if you have been living in Saudi Arabia for 6 months or more, you do not require a medical exam. Okay, so the easy way of thinking about this is, the way I think about it, is that it really depends on where you're living, not necessarily your citizenship. Okay, so if you're, let's say you're a Pakistani or you're a Filipino and you're here in Saudi Arabia and you've been here for 6 months, you can go ahead and apply without your medicals. But if you are, let's say, a Filipino or a Filipina or a Pakistani back home, then you're required to do your medicals. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So what happens once you actually apply? So there's two parts to this process. What happens generally is that we will look at two things specifically. We will look at the eligibility of a client, and then we will look at the admissibility of the client. So the eligibility, basically we're looking at letter of acceptance. How eligible are you as a student to go to Canada? So we want the letter of acceptance. So if you're going to apply to somewhere, whatever, let's say, for example, University of Toronto, they want to see that you were accepted at that university. We want to see your funds. We want to see the willingness to return home at the end of the authorized stay, potentially, right? So there are mechanisms in place, and we'll talk about that, for a student to become a permanent resident or to work. There are other avenues, but on the offset, at this point in time, what we want to do is we want to look at what are the possibilities of you returning home. That's the first part. The second part is the admissibility, right? So let's say, for example, so let's just cover admissibility first. Basically, we're looking at if we allow this person to come to Canada, they do not pose a threat to the health, safety, or security of Canadians, right? So we're looking specifically at, does this person have a contagious disease, for example? Is this person a security threat? Maybe something they were involved with certain groups or people, or they've done certain activities, or they have certain felonies, they have certain criminalities in their past. This may pose a barrier to them coming to Canada. So these are the two aspects as an officer that I'm looking at, or that we're looking at. We're going to look at your eligibility. We're going to see that you have all the documents, you're good to go, you have a letter of acceptance, you have the funds. And then we look at the admissibility portion. So a lot of times we get a question from people when people are asking about how much funds do I actually need, right? So, and it's not really a number, right? So when we're evaluating it, we're not saying, okay, for example, you need 50,000 or 20,000 or $30,000. It's not, we're not looking at this in isolation. What we are looking at it as a whole, right? We're looking at basically, is the person, so I'll give you an example, so hopefully it will be easier to understand, right? So let's say I have a son and I'm sending him overseas. We're going to look at the son, we're going to look at, I'm going to be the father who's sponsoring my child, my son. I want to see, as an officer, how consistent is the father's salary, for example. How much is the father making? If the person, let's say, for example, has savings, and even if it's not a lot of savings, even if there's a lot of savings, even if there's not a lot of savings, we want to see consistency, right? So let's say someone has, for example, $20,000. Right? We want to see if the person has, let's say they have $20,000. And if they have $20,000, but their salary is quite consistent, every month they're making around, I don't know, $5,000 or $2,000. We're not going to only look at the fact that they have only $20,000 in the bank. We want to look at, is your salary consistent? How long have you been working for this company? Have you changed jobs frequently in the past 5 to 10 years? If, let's say, for example, another factor in terms of finances, someone says, I have $20,000 and they have maybe 3 children, but one child is going to Canada. We want to technically evaluate if the person who is going to Canada, after they pay for the fees and the tuition and everything for that student, that son who is overseas, how much is left, and are they able to maintain a household with their family, with themselves back home, right? So all of these factors, it's not a number that we are looking at specifically, right? We are looking at the big picture. We're looking at it holistically to see whether or not this person has enough finance. So it's not always necessarily about a specific number. It's more about consistency about your funds. It's more about the overall picture about you, the person who's going overseas, the sponsor, and whoever like is left behind at home as well. A lot of times, the other thing that we also see as officers, we see liquid assets versus fixed assets, right? So sometimes people will say, I have land, I have a house, etc. I will tell you that liquid assets, as opposed to fixed assets, liquid assets being cash, are looked upon more favorably, right? Because generally we're going to say, as an officer, we're going to say, this person has the liquid assets, it's in hand right now. As opposed to saying, oh, if you have land, the chances of someone selling their land, I'm not saying it's unlikely, but it's harder than them getting the cash immediately. Um, and the last thing I want to mention about this before we move on to the next slide is in regards to admissibility, right? The admissibility, people believe, if there's some time that has passed, it's been 5 to 10 years or something, they don't need to declare, or it happened in another country, maybe the person has committed a crime in another country, that they don't need to mention it. Actually, from a Canadian legislation and rules, you'd have to mention that you did commit this crime, no matter how long ago it was. And the reason being is, obviously, we will do our checks, but also if we find that you did not declare a crime that you did, we consider this to be misrepresentation, and you may be banned for 5 years into going to Canada. Okay, so those are just some ideas and some general thoughts about eligibility and admissibility. If you will just excuse me for 1 second, my colleague is requesting something, so I'll just give me 1 second and I'll be right back. Hi, sorry again. I apologize for that. Can you guys hear me clearly? Can you guys hear me? Yes? If you could just chat in the corner there and tell me that you guys can hear me, that would be fantastic. And you hear me? Okay. Okay, good. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Because you never know with this technology, like sometimes it's on and sometimes it's not. Okay, so now let's just get into the part about documents. Which documents should you submit? Okay, so obviously there are IRCC forms. IRCC, this is a terminology that you'll hear quite often. It basically means Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada, right? So it's the department that usually processes your application. Okay, so IRCC forms, the letter of acceptance from a DLI. A DLI is a designated learning institute. So in simple words, what that means is it's an institute that has been approved by the federal government to be functioning, right? So most of these, I would say 99.9% of them, they're a DLI, they're a designated learning institute in Canada. The reason why we do this is, we don't want people just creating a school in their basement and saying, okay, and then people applying from overseas and then ending up in Canada and not realizing that it's not an accredited institution and that it's not an approved institution, because there are certain standards that need to be met for it to be considered a designated learning institute. Now, if you see here, it also says CAQ. That is a French term for Certificat d'Acceptation Québec, which in simple terms means that if you are applying to go to a school or university or college in the province of Quebec, they need one added document, right? And that is a CAQ, which is basically a Quebec acceptance certificate, right? So besides all the other letter of acceptance that you will, the other forms that you will need, you also need the CAQ, okay? So you have the forms, you have the acceptance letter from your institution, and then your proof of funds, right? So basically what we're seeing as officers are bank statements. You can send in the last 3-4 months of bank statements. You can send in the letter of employment from whoever is sponsoring. So generally, I'm just gonna make a general statement that most people who are going, they're like, they're in high school and they're going to university. So they're not really working, right? It's generally their parents who are working and then they're sending in the funds. So we don't anticipate that the person who's 18 or 17 years old will be, having a letter of employment. But we would like, or have that much funds in their bank account. So the proof of funds can come from, either a scholarship or like the parent, the father or the mother or whoever, or combined, and their letters of employment. So maybe the father or mother has been working for a long period of time. You can include that as well, and we would consider this under the proof of funds. Okay, and then moving on to a valid passport, it has to be 6 months or more of validity. Otherwise, we won't give you the visa because you have to have a valid passport. That's just plain and simple. Okay, and then you have minors. So sometimes you will see people who want to go and they're kids, right? So depending on the province, so maybe someone has finished their high school, but they are 17 years old. Okay, now in Canada, that would be considered still a minor, right? And I'm just gonna give you I'm just gonna tell you what they are right now. But in certain provinces, the age of majority for you to be considered an adult is 18, and in other provinces, it's 19. Okay, so I'll give you the main ones. So the 18, you have to be 18 years old to be considered an adult in Alberta, Manitoba, Ontario, Prince Edward Island, Quebec, and Saskatchewan. Okay, and 19 are the rest of them. Okay, so British Columbia, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, Labrador, Northwest Territories, Nova Scotia, and Nunavut, right? So generally, I'm just gonna make a general statement. We see most applications of people going to Ontario and Alberta and British Columbia. So if you're going to Ontario or you're thinking of going to Ontario or Alberta, then you have to be 18 to be considered an adult. And if you're going to British Columbia or New Brunswick, then you have to be 19. Okay, now the reason why I'm telling you this is if you are not 18 or 19, then we need a custodian declaration form, right? And that's also on our website. And basically, it's just a form that basically says, listen, I'm the parent, or the guardian of this person, and I authorize my child to go. And you have to have made arrangements for that child when they reach Canada because they're still considered a minor and not an adult. Okay. And the last thing on this, point is the receipt of payment, and that's basically the study permit fees. When you apply all of it online, due to we no longer take physical paper applications anymore. So when you do it online, the payment is done online as well, and it is in Canadian, and they do the conversion basically based on whichever country you're at, right? So it's 150 Canadian, and then 85 for your biometrics, right? 85 Canadian for your biometrics, and then if you're applying as a family of 2 or more, then for your biometrics, not for your study permit, for your biometrics specifically, the maximum that we're going to charge you is 170. So let's say you have 2 people or 5 people in your family. For the biometrics, we will charge you a maximum of 170. Okay, so let's move on to other documents that we may require. So other documents that we want to see, which will also lend to your eligibility, here are proof of legal residency in Saudi Arabia, right? So we want to see, if you don't have a valid visa, if you don't have a valid permit, if you don't have an iqama here, we're really going to question your residency here, right? Which also lends to your credibility in the future. So we want to know whether or not you have residency here. It speaks to the legality of you being here and the legality of potentially being in Canada as well. Okay. The other thing is your academic records. We want to see if you have send in your exam results, IELTS results as well. This is mostly done already from the institution, from the university or college. You already have those results for your IELTS, so basically your English test results, and obviously diplomas, degrees, transcripts, anything that will support why you should be studying in Canada, you can include it in your application, okay? Also, it depends on where you are in your career. So it might be that you have a work experience. For example, you might have done your bachelor's somewhere and you're working here or you're working elsewhere and you have experience, but now you want to move on to something else. You want to get your master's, you want to get maybe college experience, whatever it is, and you have an employer. So you can include the letter of employment of the current employer of wherever you're working. Maybe you have previous certifications as well. You can include those as well. The last thing is the study plan, right? And this is a document that usually we will see people saying, basically at the core of it, we want to know why you want to go to Canada, right? What is your study plan? Why is studying in Canada important for you, right? So some of the questions that you might want to ask yourself when you're writing your study plan is, why can't I do those studies here? Why can't I pursue that master's studies here in the GCC or in Saudi Arabia? And give your reasons why you prefer going to Canada. What benefit will it bring to you or to your life? What benefit will it have in your career? Is it looked on more favorably in the line of work that you're doing to get a certificate or a degree or a master's or a PhD from a Canadian institution? Maybe I know in Canada there are very specialized programs. So you might want to say something along the lines, this is a specialized program. It's very unique. It's not offered anywhere else in the world. That's why I want to go and study. This is just an example, right? Are you changing career paths? It's something that we want to look at, right? So for example, if you're a certified architect, right, and now you decide to become a chef, that's fine. We don't have anything against that, but we want to know why you're changing career paths, right? We want to know maybe you're studying for an MBA or something. But if you're changing career paths, you've been doing this for 10, 15 years and now you want to go study something else, tell us why you want to go study something else. And sometimes we will see applications when you already have a higher level of education. So let's say you have a master's or you already have a bachelor, right? And you're applying to go study in Canada. We want to find out, let's say you're applying for a bachelor's, but you already have a master's, right? So there may very well be a reason why you're doing that, but you need to tell us why, because for us, your usual trajectory of studies is you're doing your bachelor's and then your master's and then your PhD, right? But it doesn't mean that we won't accept it. We just want to understand better what your study plan is and why you're going for a lower level of education. So these are just some of the things that we generally see on applications, and hopefully this helps you when you provide your application for it to be a more wholesome and holistic application. Okay, so I know there's going to be a lot of information that I'm sharing with you. So one of the things I wanted to do is also share some of the links that will be helpful for you. So at the end, I will put all the links that I'm showing you in the chat box, and you can copy and paste them for your own benefit. But just to give you an idea, because there is a lot of information. So if we went to the IRCC website, um, when you click on this, it will take you to okay, just give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. Uh, I'm just opening the link. Okay, can you guys see this website? Can you guys see this website? Any? Yes? Uh, okay, hold on. Oh, you can see it. Yes, okay, good. Thank you. Maria Teresa. Thank you. Okay, so I can see. Okay, good. So basically, I will definitely like. There's a lot of information here, but it tells you studying Canada as an international student. It will give you information about flights currently because of COVID, and then there's a bunch of information about applying, how to get a study permit if you're already in Canada and you want to extend, and then work. And I will share these links with you, right? The other website that you could go to as well is you just go to YouTube, and YouTube here, you just Google international students study, work, stay in Canada. Or if you just Google IRCC, international students, you'll see that there's videos and it'll show you how to apply and a bunch of other things as well. Okay, and then if you go to our actual link, Citizenship and Immigration in Canada, you'll see that there are playlists, and there's a lot of information, right? And they're in different languages, open work permits. So definitely express entry. There's a lot of stuff in regards to resources online as well. Okay, so now, okay, good, right? So that's pretty clear, and I'll share all of these links with you guys at the end of the presentation, so you guys can always refer back to it whenever you need it. Okay, so one of the main things and at the core of Canadian immigration is family reunification. And obviously we want people to go together, right? We don't want, I mean, if you want to go together, obviously, right? Like we're not gonna force you to go together, but we wanna give you the option, right? We wanna say, look, if you have a spouse, if you have a family member, you know, what contingencies what contingencies do you have so that everyone can go together? Okay, so let's talk about dependents. So when I say dependent, what I mean is either a spouse, a live-in partner, or your children. Okay, it could be any of those, right? Um, so let's say I'm the principal applicant. I'm the one that is going to study, and I have a family. So what am I going to do? I'm going to apply, and let's say I can apply together or they can apply separately, but we prefer that you apply together because it just makes processing easier for us. And what you want to do is here's my application, here's my letter of acceptance. I got, let's just give a hypothetical example. I got accepted at the University of Ottawa in a master's program. It's for 2 years. I provided IRCC immigration with all my funds and documents, letter of acceptance. I gave them absolutely everything. And then I told them, listen, I have a wife and I have 2 kids as well. So what does that mean? So when I look at it as an officer, I'm going to say, okay, this person is accepted. How many dependents does this person have? They have a wife and they have 2 kids. What can we do for them? And basically what we will say is, for your wife or your spouse or whoever your partner is, we will say you are allowed to request and apply for an open work permit. Okay, for the spouse, usually of working age, 18 or over, right? And then for the kids, we will say you're allowed to apply for a study permit. Okay, the study permit, they are open. The work permit is open. And what that means for you is that you can work anywhere you want. If, let's say, my spouse is a doctor or works as a chef or wants to work as a receptionist, he or she can do that. Okay, and my kids, they can study wherever they want, right? So based on their age, obviously, right? Like, you're not going to send a 5-year-old to university, but based on their age, they can go to any type of any type of school or high school or grade school, depending on where they are, right? And it's open, right? So it's not restricted. We're not saying you have to go to this high school, you have to go to this grade school, you have to work in this place. No, for my family, it's open. But for myself, I definitely have to study my master's, that specific program at that specific university. Okay, I hope that's clear enough. Okay, and then the last thing I want to mention about dependents is that your dependents who are or will be 5 years old, based on Canadian law, they should be in school. So when you are applying for your children, apply for a study permit for your children, okay? And not just a visitor visa or temporary resident visa, okay? Because we want them to go, and because I'll tell you what happens, right? What happens is, if we don't give you the study permit, you go to Canada and your child, they are of school age and they should be going to school. And then you have to go and do the whole application again, apply, go take time off of your day. It's an added stress that is unnecessary, right? That we could totally avoid it on your end and on our end as well, right? It just makes life easier for everyone. So if you have children who are, like, let's say for example, I'll give you an example, right? The kid is 4 years old right now, but your school typically starts in Canada in September, but they turn 5 in September, right? So you can make an argument. You can say, listen, he's not 5 years old yet. So should I apply for a temporary resident visa or should I apply for a study visa? If your study, the principal applicant, my studies, for example, at the University of Ottawa, is about to start in September, apply for your child's study permit and not the temporary resident visa. Okay? So it will just facilitate things, even if they are not 5 years old yet, but by the time you travel, they will be. You won't have to worry about this when you get to Canada. It's one less thing to actually worry about. Okay. Now, what I wanted to do here is ask you a question about families. All right. So if you just bear with me for 1 second. Okay. So I'm going to post a link here. This is just for our information. We want to know, this is basically in regards to, sorry, can you guys see the link? If you guys can just say yes in the chat box, that would be fantastic. Okay, so hi Constance, can you hear me now? Okay, perfect, good. Okay, so I did send you guys the link for the dependents, right? And in terms of you guys uh, thinking about traveling, okay, good. I'm glad you guys can hear me. That's perfect. Okay, and you guys, so if you, Nikki, if you have questions, can you please just put it in the Slido question box that we had posted earlier? One of my colleagues will repost the link for the Slido questions right now, okay? So if you can just ask your questions there, that would be fantastic. And we will get to your questions, okay? Okay. Uh, okay, you guys, okay, we're back. Can you guys hear me? Yes? Can you guys hear me? Yes? Anyone? Yes. Okay, good. Okay, thanks. Always, oh, I'm always, yes. Okay, AA, please ask your questions in the Slido link that we're going to post now, okay? Okay, so let's move on to the next question, right? Can I work as a student? This is a question that we received. Okay, so sorry. This is the link here, as you can see. Please ask all your questions there, and we will get through as many as we can at the end, okay? Just so that we cover the presentation first, and hopefully it answers most of your questions. And then the questions that are outstanding, we will get to them, I promise, okay? So don't worry that your question will not be answered. We will answer your question. Okay, so let's get back to the presentation. So can I work as a student? Yes. So you can definitely work as a student if you have a study permit, right? So if you have a study permit, let's say, go back to my example, I applied to the University of Ottawa and I got approved. Now I have a study permit. Can I work along simultaneously when I am a student? Can I work as well? We say, of course, yes, you can definitely work, but how much work can you do? Because the point of giving you the study permit is primarily for you to study, okay? Primarily. Hello? Okay. So sorry, guys. I knew this was going to happen. That's my bad. That's not proper English, by the way, okay? But that's my fault. All right? Okay. So you guys can hear me properly, I'm hoping. Yes? Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Apologies for the interruption. That's my fault. That's on my end, okay? Okay. So we were talking about, can you work as a student? You can definitely work as a student. The thing is what you want to do is you're going to primarily go as a student, but you can also work for how many hours? 20 hours outside of your campus. So let's say you're studying at the University of Ottawa. You can work at a restaurant, you can work in an office for 20 hours maximum, okay? During the school year. But then let's say vacation comes around. It is June, July, August, or July, August generally. Then you can work full time for more than 20 hours during vacation time, okay? And then the last part is if you are on campus, so at the University of Ottawa, for example, or at any university, you can work unlimited amount of hours on campus, right? So generally what will happen, I'll give you an example. When I was studying at university, sometimes I was a TA, I was a teacher's assistant or a research assistant, and it was more than, I mean, those are some of the stuff that I was doing, but there are lots of jobs that are present on campus. And if you want to work more than 20 hours on campus, you're more than welcome to with your work permit. Now, sometimes we'll get a question, do you need an extra study permit if you already have, do you need an extra work permit if you have a study permit? Actually, on your study permit, most of the time, we will say that you can work on campus or off campus to a maximum of 20 hours, so you don't need an extra document. The only time, that we will, give you a study permit and a work permit is if your studies demand it. So let's say at a master's or a PhD level, you have a extracurricular, you have, what do they call this? What is it called? Co-ops, right? So your co-ops, you will need it because you're doing research outside of the university. You're doing type of like maybe you have to go to libraries. I don't know, but then we will give you the work permit and the study permit as well. Okay. Now this condition about okay, I've given you the study permit, or the department has given you the study permit, and you can work for 20 hours or more. This applies to everything besides language studies and just general interest courses or preparatory courses, right? So most of the time, if you're going to college, if you're going to university, this will apply to you. But if you're going to something which is like 3 months or 6 months, 6 months or less, generally you working, you're going there for such a short period of time, it will be dedicated only to your studies and not to working. Okay, so let me move on to the next question. So this is a very common question, and I'm very happy to share this with you guys, right? So we want to talk, you'll hear this term a lot, the post-graduation work permit. What in the world does this mean, right? Basically, I'm going to tell you what the principle is, right? The principle is, listen, the Canadian government sees you guys, sees international students as you're coming, you're studying, you study for 3 years, 4 years, you've really absorbed the Canadian educational system, you've really absorbed the Canadian culture. We want to retain you. We see you as an asset. We say you've studied here, you're an asset. We want to keep you as much as possible and as long as possible, right? So what we do is after your studies, I'll go into the details, but I'm just giving you the overall picture. After your studies, we say to you, listen, you've studied here for 3 or 4 years, you've graduated. Do you want to work here for another 2 to 3 years? And it may lead to you becoming a permanent resident because not only will you have your study educational experience, you will also have work experience, and we would like to retain you if you would like to stay. That's basically the principle of the post-graduation work permit. So let's go a little bit into the details, right? It's a two-way street. It's your benefit if you want to stay and remain and become a permanent resident and eventually a Canadian citizen. It's to your benefit to do that if you wish, and it's also to our benefit that we are retaining talent, we're retaining your experience, we're retaining your education, we're retaining you as an individual and the human capital that you have that you will bring to the table. Okay. Now, usually how this works, it's quite simple, right? So let's say you study, you apply, you go to Canada and you study at the University of Toronto for 2, 3 years, 4 years, whatever, you graduate. After you graduate, then you apply for this specific work permit. You say, I've studied in Canada for 3 years, 4 years, I've graduated. Here are my transcripts. Here is proof that I've graduated from this university, and you apply for an open work permit. Okay, you apply. Generally, we will look at your certification. We'll see that your transcripts, you approved, you studied, you graduated. You can send us your certificate, your degree if you want to. And then you say to us, I want an open work permit. We give you the work permit, and you can go to Canada and you can work in pretty much anything you want. Okay, and I say pretty much with a caveat, right? Because most of the time we want you to work in something that has a NOC code. And a NOC code is a National Occupational Classification, is basically a fancy term that there are, like, if you just look up, if you Google NOC and then plus Canada, you'll see that there's a list of jobs or career paths basically on that NOC level, right? And there's hundreds of them, right? And basically we're saying it has to be on something within this realm here. And it's a huge umbrella, right? So as long as it's something, I honestly can't think of an example right now that isn't in a NOC code, right? Uh, that's how, that's how wide it actually is, okay? So as long as you're saying you're going to work and then you work for something under this NOC level, under the National Occupational Classification, after 2 or 3 years. Now I keep saying after 2 or 3 years because when the department is issuing you this open work permit, it is actually going to be based on the length of your studies in Canada. Okay, so like we said, we're going to take it from the top, right? You were a student, you went, you studied, and then you graduated. So maybe let's just say, for example, you studied and you graduated from a program that was 3 years long or 4 years long, right? So we will give you a work permit that is maximum 3 years in length, right? Open work permit for 3 years in length. And then let's say I finish my studies, I get my open work permit, I go to Canada, I work for 3 years. Towards the end of my 3 years, I go back to the department, IRCC, Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada, and I say, look, I've studied here, I've worked here, now I'm applying to become a permanent resident. The officer will look at your work history, they will look at your study history, academic history, and then we will say, okay, you graduated, you worked, here is your PR, basically, right, in an ideal situation. Right? And then after 3 to 4 years, you can apply and become a citizen. Okay, the last thing I want to mention about this is the length of the work permit that we give you. Either way, it's the minimum is 2 years and the maximum is 3 years, depending on your length of study. Okay, so just in regards to this, now I hope I've covered most of the important factors. So how do you apply now, right? If you're applying as for a study permit, you just go online and then you can apply. So I'm just going to show you that I will link everything afterwards, right? As it's mentioned in the notes, at the end of the presentation, we will be sharing all the links that we've mentioned here. So just give me 1 second and I will show you what it looks like when you're applying, right? Okay, so I think you guys can see this. Yes? Okay. So basically, I mean, you can do an easy Google search if you wanted to. It's a study permit, how to apply. basically tells you what I told you here: get your documents, acceptance letter, and then processing times, and then all of that information. And then when you scroll down right to the bottom, you'll see where are you applying from. You wanna, I mean, I'm guessing you're here in, you're outside of Canada. And then you click how do you want to apply online, because paper right now isn't working. And then apply, and then you just go through the steps basically, right? So it tells you what you need, how to scan and send your documents, read the instruction guide. Um, if you're asking for classes for more or less than 6 months, what fees you need to get, medical exams, police certificates, language testing, your fees. And then here you'll go to create an account or sign in if you already have an account. And that's basically the application process, right? So you go to the website, you upload your documents, you pay the fees, you do biometrics if you need to, and off you go. And that's basically it. Okay. Okay. I almost forgot to mention this. Is include a letter of explanation for any documents that are missing. Now, you know the thing is sometimes we will see applications which are not perfected. That's just a fancy term for incomplete, right? So sometimes we'll see applications which are incomplete. And what that means is we've asked you to submit a document, but you did not submit the document. Now uh, this causes a little bit of concern, not in a big way, but basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to process your application as quickly as we can, right? Because obviously we have a huge caseload, and we want to get through as many applications as we can efficiently. So what happens if you don't submit something that's required, we have to go back to you and say, Mr. John Doe, why didn't you, can you submit this application, right? Can you submit this document, or can you submit this form? And then we have to wait for it to come in, and then we have to review it again. So let's say we ask you, for example, what was your previous travel history, for example, but you've never traveled, right? So you've been here, you were born here, you were raised here. You maybe this is the first time you're even applying for a passport, right? But we're saying the immigration department is saying to you, hey, provide us with your travel history. So what you do, you don't ignore the question. Instead, you can write something, you can write a paragraph, you can write a Word document, whatever you want, and just say that I have not traveled outside of whatever, Saudi Arabia or the Philippines or India or wherever you're from, right? You can say I haven't traveled outside, and that would explain to us why you didn't provide that document, right? It definitely helps you and us in terms of processing, because we don't have to do the back and forth. We understand it's very clear. You haven't traveled before. This is why I can't provide you with the form, because I haven't traveled. Plain and simple. Instead of us doing a guessing game and trying to figure out, hey, did this person travel? Do they have a passport? Why didn't they declare that they traveled before, right? And we start going down a rabbit hole, and we start wondering what's going on. Okay, so I hope, sorry for my rant, but that's the part about the documents, right? Okay, you may or may not be familiar with VACs, or visa application centers. There's 3 of them here in Saudi Arabia, one in Riyadh, Jeddah, and one in Khobar, right? Okay, one in Riyadh, Jeddah, and Khobar. So basically, we used to accept paper applications at the VACs, okay, at the visa application center. Currently, what the VAC's purpose is to do these 3 things that that's on your screen right now. So they do the biometrics collection, the decision that we make for the applicants, they get to give them the envelopes, the documents, and if we ask you for your passport, you go to a VAC, you drop off your passport, and they will get it to us. We will issue you your visa, and they will return it to you, and then off you go. Okay, so basically that's the purpose of the VACs at this point, and we work in a partnership with them. We are in constant communication with them, and they're very helpful to our processing and to our shared goals. Okay, and I just put the times there that you can go to the VAC for your submission. And obviously, there's appointments and all of those things. Everything is on their website. If you just Google VFS Saudi Arabia, you will see all of the contacts information that you might require. Okay, so we're about an hour in. I apologize if this is taking longer than anticipated, but I hope just to let you know, give you a heads up that we are almost done. There's a couple more slides, and then we will get to your questions as well. Okay, so when should you apply, right? So some people, they may think that they want to apply prematurely, right? What we will need is we will need a letter of acceptance at the bare minimum, right? So when you, like, let's say you want to go study in Canada, you finished high school, for example, you finished high school and now you want to go study in Canada, apply to that school in Canada. Let's say you want to go study at the University of Windsor, right? So you apply to the University of Windsor, they look at your transcripts, they look at your grades, and then they say, yes, Jane Doe, we accept you as a student, as an international student. Here is your letter of acceptance for the fall term or winter term or summer term, whatever term it is, okay? You get this letter of acceptance. LOA is letter of acceptance. You get the letter of acceptance, and then you send it to us with all the documents that I had mentioned in the first or second slide, right? So you send it with all the documents that we require, your transcripts, the fees, biometrics, all of that stuff. That's when you apply. You should not be applying if you have not received a letter of acceptance from that institution that you want to go to study in Canada from, okay? And obviously, like I mentioned previously about your CAQ, your Certificat d'Acceptation Québec, if you're thinking of studying in Quebec, in a university at the Université de Montréal or anywhere else, wherever in Quebec, then you need not only the letter of acceptance, but you also require the certificate of acceptance from Quebec as well, okay? And now, this is more a contemporary issue, unfortunately, is that everyone is facing is coronavirus, right? So this has obviously impacted absolutely everyone, right? It's impacted the schools, it's impacted the universities, it's impacted processing, it's impacted everything. So just give yourself enough time ahead of time that you are doing all of these steps, because things are very slow, unfortunately. That's how it works. You might apply and try to get your letter of acceptance and you think, oh yeah, I'll get it in a week or 2 weeks time, but it's taking a month or it's taking a month and a half, right? So once you are ready, my suggestion to you is apply to the university, and once you get the documentation that you require, apply to us as soon as you can so that we can process it efficiently as well. Okay. Okay, so just some general tips. So complete the applications form yourselves, okay? You can obviously get help from your parents, your siblings, whoever, but answer all the questions, right? When I say yourself, what I mean by that, you should know what information is being shared on your behalf. And the implications of that are quite serious as well. So let's say someone says something about you that is untrue, that is false. We get that information and we say that, Mr. John Doe, you said that you did this. And then we ask you for proof, and then you can't provide proof because it never happened. Maybe you didn't graduate from that university before or something, right? So we might consider this as being as misrepresenting yourself, okay? Give me 1 second, okay? Sorry, guys. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Yes? Okay. I'm going to say yes. Everyone say yes. Anyone say yes in the chat box? Okay, perfect. Excellent. All right, thank you, everyone. Okay, so answer all the questions yourselves, or obviously someone you trust. The other thing that I need to highlight for you guys is make sure that the updated phone number and email that you are using is the one that you give us, right? Because it takes a lot of effort on our end to try to reach someone if we don't have the correct email or phone number, right? Because What happens is the application comes in, we say, listen, we need something, or we need you to get your passport, or whatever it is. We email and call, and then the number isn't anywhere. So what do we do with your application, right? Because your application is with us, it's, let's just say it's approved, but how do we get you to the next steps if you guys don't give us the proper contact information? So when you are applying, please provide us with your proper documentation in regards to your contacts. Okay. If you have, in many cases, obviously, like I mentioned in an example, the person that's going is 18, 19 years old, right? So let's say, for example, it's my son that's going, and I'm the sponsor, I'm the financial sponsor, I'm the person that's going to be sponsoring and supporting them. Please show the connection between the two people, right? So if it's father and son, mother and son, maybe it's like guardian, maybe it's a godparent, whoever it is, please provide us with an explanation, because sometimes we don't want to guess, right? A part of our job isn't to guess. We don't want to make assumptions on your behalf, right? So the more information you give us, the better, because it's just more efficient for everyone. We're saying, okay, there's this 18-year-old kid that's going. Who's sponsoring the kid? It's some random person that we don't know is the parent. We don't know it's the guardian. Make the connection for us, connect the dots so that we will be able to process your application faster, okay? Evidence, ability to cover all costs, right? So provide us with as much information as you can in regards to finances. We want to see, bank statements. We want to see letters of employment. Maybe you have bank statements from back home, all of that stuff. And remember what I said about liquid assets versus fixed assets, right? So liquid assets are looked on more favorably because we know it's liquid assets, it's available to be used, right? And also more importantly is declare all previous visa refusals, right? So maybe you've applied previously and you were refused. Now it might be as a visitor, you might have said, okay, I wanted to go visit Niagara Falls, or I wanted to go visit Canada or Banff or wherever, and then you were refused. And now you're applying for a study permit. Just because it's a different line of business, just because it's a different type of application, you still need to declare the refusal, okay? If you do not declare the refusal, the legislation is very clear that you may be refused for not declaring that application. So even if you have a great application, right? The application is good, you provided all your finances, you have everything that you have all the finances, you have everything that you need, but then you had a previous refusal, but you didn't declare it. These are grounds for a person to be refused, okay? Because it speaks to your credibility and it speaks to misrepresentation. Okay. Moving on. Okay, this is just information about coronavirus. I will not spend a lot of time on this, but basically what we're saying is prior to corona, to the pandemic, the DLIs, the schools, you had to be obviously registered with the Canadian government and all of that. But because of corona, we imposed on the schools that they have to meet the health standards, right? Because we don't want to be sending people to schools where the health standards are not met. They have to have the proper security, precautions, they have to have everything in place so that people can actually go in a safe environment to protect themselves and protect those around them, okay? So there is an approved list of universities, schools, colleges that are on there. And I would say like 99.9% of the schools are on there now. At the beginning of the pandemic, they were not, because people were coming up to standards. They were figuring out what code, like what the security safety code were, so that they could meet it. But by and large, I would say now they are all up to code. So if you wanted to see if the school that you're applying to, let's say, I don't know, whatever, University of Ottawa is on there, you can just Google DLI and then Canada plus COVID, and it will give you a list of schools that are on the list. So I'll give you an example. Right now, it's not as common, just for your knowledge and for your information. At the beginning, we were having applicants who were approved, right? So you as an applicant, you were good to go. However, the school didn't make the cut yet. They didn't make the safety standard yet. So we couldn't technically send you to those schools in good conscience. But by and large now, most of them have been approved, I would say. So you're good to go. But if you just want to check if your school is on the list, just look up DLI COVID and you'll see a list of schools that are on there. Okay, this is a word of caution that I need to flag for you and bring to your attention, okay? So generally, you are allowed to have a representative or a consultant, right? You can have someone, and if you are having someone, we have a specific form for that. It is on our website. You can just look it up. It's a form for representative, and then you need to fill in the information. So let's say you get a representative and you want that person to represent you in your application and in your communication with us. Because what happens is we generally communicate with the person that you have appointed as a representative. So you are totally 100% allowed to have a representative. What I would really like to flag for you is be careful of the representative. And the reason I'm telling you this is because we have seen fraud on our end, right? We have seen fraud on multiple occasions in different forms, in different types, that people have given good money. And sometimes they've charged, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 in different lines of businesses, right? So sometimes in the permanent residence, whatever, right? But just for what's important for you to know, we have seen fraud where people have said, look, I've hired this person, I gave them X amount of money. However, the person didn't do their job. They didn't send in the application. They sent in the wrong information. They sent in other people's information, even though they were trying to represent you. Okay. And at the end of the day, they'll come to us and say, this is what happened. And unfortunately, in most cases, it is after the fact, right? It is after the fact that these people have, basically defrauded them and taken their money. So be careful in regards to your representative, okay? Make sure that you get someone who is reliable, who knows what they're doing, who has experience, who has a public website, not just running it out of Facebook or Instagram or something. Like, have someone legit, someone legitimate that is actually doing this. And the point that I will make to you is that in Canada, consultants, representatives, they need to be accredited and registered. There's an entire board, there's an entire system in place that if you want to become a representative, you can't just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to become a representative, give me your money and I'll apply on your behalf. No, there's a procedure, there's a process in place, and you have to go through an exam, and then you become part of the ICCRC, which is Immigration Consultants of Canada Regulatory Council, right? So there's a very strict standard in place. This, unfortunately, happens in Canada, where we have a board. It does not happen overseas, right? So people that are overseas, people that are applying, like I said in my first point, you are definitely 100% allowed to have a representative. Just be careful. We don't want you to be losing money. We don't want you to be defrauded. We don't want you to go through that experience. Protect yourselves, protect your family. Just be safe and be vigilant in regards to your application. And like I mentioned to you as well, right? Like, every single thing that I've talked to you about today is actually on our website, right? It's on YouTube, it's on our website. And that's the reason, right? That's the reason why we put in so much detail, that you really, if you really wanted to, you can go on your own, go to the website, and we will take you step by step on how to get to the next process. What are the next steps, what you need to do, okay? Sorry, I'm going in the wrong direction. Okay, so this is basically a redundant slide. I have no idea why I kept this, right? But it's basically talking about approved designated learning institutes, right? Right? This is basically it's saying if you're approved, you can go. So just check the website. If you got your approval from the university, check on our website in regards to if your designated learning institute is there. And then, you can go from there. Okay. And now, let me just see. Give me 1 second. Yes, we've done this. Okay. Now, okay, so we're almost at the end. There's just a couple of more slides that I want to share with you. Because of the volatile nature of COVID and the impacts that it has. And what I mean by that is that it impacts things in different ways. It impacts flights. It impacts entry into Canada. It impacts countries that you're transiting to and from. Because of all of these things, it changes day to day. Okay? So there is a website that we have as the department that is, okay, just give me 1 second. I will share my screen with you. Okay, so I hope you guys can see this, right? So if you go to this website, it's just travel.gc COVID. Okay, you can just look up travel COVID, and it will give you the most updated information from a Canadian perspective, right? So what you need to know, who can come to Canada, visitors, foreign workers, students, how to plan your entry, flying if you're coming in, what to do in terms of quarantine, what app you need, the mandatory quarantine. All of this is on the website, right? It'll give you information about what the current situation is in Canada in terms of vaccines. Let's just say, for example, you went here and you went to students. It will tell you, okay, what, like if you haven't applied for a visa yet, if you have already applied, for foreign workers, et cetera, immediate family members who can join. Anyways, I don't want to bore you with the details, but that's basically the website that will basically tell you everything that you need to know currently and updated, right? Because things change day to day. You need to be informed. You need to know what's going on because to plan your trip, to plan your travel to Canada, you got approved. Congratulations, you're going to study in Canada, but you need to know what's going on. So go to this website, keep updated with what's going on so that you know what's happening in Canada, right? Just as a side note, currently, obviously, you need mandatory testing before you fly to go to Canada. And also, there's a 3-day quarantine that you need to do once you land at one of our major airports. And then after that, there's an 11-day quarantine that you can do at your own location, okay? Now, just give me 1 second. I wanted to share with you a link in regards to um, so sorry guys, I'm looking for a link before to share with you guys in regards to the survey at the end. Now, my colleagues are going to post the link for the survey in the chat box, right? So what if you would be so kind to go to the link. They're about to post it now. Just give me 1 second. It's happening, I promise. It's just the internet is very slow. Great. Okay, so if you guys can go to this link here, it'll take you a couple of minutes. Just take 2-3 minutes and then we'll come back. Just go to the link and please answer the questions for the survey. And the reason why we're doing the questions of the survey so that we get a better idea on how to assist and provide further presentations. You can tell me I did a terrible job, okay? And you know this was totally useless, or maybe it was helpful, or maybe there are things that I did not cover yet. And I did not forget, I will definitely go to your questions, but just take a couple minutes to answer the survey, and then we'll finish up the presentation, and then we'll go to all your questions. Okay, so I hope you guys had enough time to fulfill this. Do you guys have enough time, or do you need more time? If you can just say done or not done, that would be fantastic. Can you guys hear me? You guys can hear me, right? Participants, can you guys hear me? If you could just say yes, that would be fantastic. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, good. Good, 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 good. Thank you. So it's always iffy, you know? I don't trust my computer, but okay. So just moving on to the last final slides now. Where do I find additional resources? You can go to our Embassy of Canada to Saudi Arabia. You can just Google any of these, and you will see this type of information. The embassy, and I will share all of the links. One of my colleagues will share all of the links to everything that we discussed today. Okay, the Embassy of Canada to Saudi Arabia. Education in Canada is a very good website that covers a lot of information about studying specifically in Canada. IRCC is our website as a department. It will give you tons of information, not only just on students, but on every other line of business that we have. So express entry, PR, postgraduate work permits, temporary foreign workers, anything that you can think of is on our website. And if you're considering going to Canada to study in Quebec, then they have a dedicated website as well, Immigration Canada. The last thing is, let's just say you wanted to have more information about, whatever it may be, and you didn't find it on the website. This is the email. When you go here, even if you just Google CIC web form, this last part here, CIC web form, you can ask us questions there. Now, mind you, I mean, it's a way of communicating with us. However, I would strongly suggest that you go to our website first, because chances are we're going to give you the same answer that is on the website if it's a generic question. Okay? And our socials, if you want to follow us either on Twitter on English or French, it's at CANEMBSA and AMBCANSA for the French speaking amongst you. Okay, so now I will go to your questions and answer the questions that you have provided in the Slido link. Now, one of my colleagues will also input the Slido link into this chat, just in case you missed it at the beginning. So we'll start with the questions and then we can go from there. So just give me 1 second while I see what's happening. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good. Okay, so the first question that I have here is, I am waiting for permanent resident visa as a federal skilled worker. Can I apply for a master's program, then convert my visa to a resident instead of study permit? Okay, so it's a good question. So you've applied for, correct me if I'm wrong at any point here, I'm waiting for a permanent resident visa, so you've applied for a PR as a federal skilled worker. Great. Can I apply for a master's program, then convert? So you can apply. So let's just break this down for a second, right? Let's deconstruct this question, because I think you cheated a little bit, because you've asked 2 questions in this 1 question, but it's okay. It's not a big deal. I'm joking, right? So you have your federal, what's it called? Sorry, your federal skilled worker, and then you want to apply for your master's program. We have what is called dual intent, right? Dual intent basically means you're applying for 2 lines of business simultaneously, and that's totally allowed. That's legal, it's permissible. If you want to do that, you can do that, no problem. Okay? So you can apply for your federal skilled worker and you can apply for your master's program. The condition that we have when you're doing something like this, when you're applying for two programs simultaneously, is that you don't violate any of the rules, regulations, conditions of either of those programs. Okay? So your question is a little bit complex and I'll get back to it, but just for the general audience who are here, I'll give you another example, right? So let's say someone is studying as a permanent, let's say, got sponsored from a Canadian and is getting married to a Canadian in Canada, right? So I'm here and I want to marry a Canadian in Canada and I'm overseas, okay? So I've made an application to move to Canada and, be with my spouse permanently. That's one application. And then, you know what? I want to study, I want to do a master's, or I want to go visit. Let's make it very simple. I want to go visit. So can I apply for a visitor's visa as well? Yes, you can apply. I can apply for obviously my permanent residency so that I can be with my spouse in Canada, and I can apply for a visitor visa. The condition though cannot be sorry, you cannot, I'm looking for an actual word here. You cannot, I want to say break the condition, but that's not the act. It'll come to me eventually, right? So you have to respect the conditions of both programs. So if I am going and applying as a temporary resident visa, as a visitor, I can only stay in Canada for 6 months or less. Okay, and then I need to leave Canada and then come back. Okay, that's the rule for this for the visitor visa. So even though I have two ongoing applications, I need to respect the rules of both applications, right? So even though I have the other permanent residency application ongoing in the background, it's taking time, they're asking for documents and interviews and all of that stuff, that's fair. That's in one box. The other box, I can go to Canada, visit my spouse, and then leave after that. So you can have dual intent. So going back to the first person's question, can I apply for a master's program? Yes, you can apply. Can you convert my visa to a resident instead of a study permit? No, because one is a permanent residency application and one is a temporary residency application. We cannot convert it into the other. Okay? You can apply for both, but we will not be able to convert and merge them into each other. I hope that answers your question. Okay. Second question here, visa refusals declaration should cover also the previous application years ago from other countries like the US. Yes. Any country that you applied to that refused your application, thank you for bringing this up. So let's say you applied to us, the Canadian government, and you were previously refused, you need to declare that. If you applied to the US, you applied anywhere else and you were refused, please include that as well, okay? You talked about funds at the beginning of the presentation. What about scholarships or funded programs? Do we need to provide bank statements in this case? Yes. So the rule of thumb in any application, not only in student applications, is provide us more is always better than less. Okay? More is always better than less. You want to give us the maximum amount of documentation that you can. So if we're saying, hey, provide us with your funds, and you got a full ride scholarship, okay, it's for $40,000, great, congratulations. Give us documentation that you have the scholarship, but also provide us with the documentation that you have funds. Provide us with the documentation that you have an ongoing salary, that your dad is sponsoring you. We need all of that information as well, right? Because you know how anything works is that the scholarships, they are dependent on several things, okay? Scholarships, for example, they may be dependent on your grades. They may be dependent on continued performance. So they might give it to you in the first year, but if your performance goes down in the second year, you might not be eligible for the scholarship. So there are a lot of conditions attached to scholarships as well. But scholarships is just an example, right? So if you have various avenues of income, whatever, sponsorship, financial support, please provide us with all of those, even if you do have a scholarships. I'm 18 years old. Can my parents come as a guardian? Well, your parents, technically from a Canadian legal perspective, your parent is your parent, and your guardian is someone who isn't your parent but is in charge of you. So, can your parent come? I'm just going to end. I think that's what the intent of your question is. Can your parents accompany you when you're going to travel? So, given the current circumstances, your parents can definitely apply with you to travel with you, okay? And you can make a case in that study plan that I had mentioned previously. You can make a case. You can say that, it's my first time traveling. This is why I need my parents there. But I would also like to flag for you that if you are 18, 19, 20, as you may know now, that we consider you to be an adult in Canada, right? So we look at an application holistically. We look at it as a whole, right? What is the purpose of your parents accompanying you now, right? We want to know that. Maybe there is a viable reason. Maybe there are some challenges that you are facing that it will be helpful for them to be there for you. But like I said, we will not do guesswork, right? So you need to explain to us and provide us with a rationale as to why your parents are coming with you. I'll give you another example, okay? So let's say you have a child, right? You have a child, for whatever reason, I'm gonna give you just like a hypothetical situation. The child is like 12, 13 years old, but the child is gifted, okay? They have an IQ, very high IQ level, and there's a very specialized school in Canada that you want the child to go to, and the child's only 12 or 13. So in that case, we will look at that situation. Can a child that is 12 years old train for themselves, like, be like, just deal with the situation, culture, traveling, setting themselves up at 12? Probably not, right? Unless there's a guardian there and whatnot. So, and if you apply with the parent, chances are we will say, yeah, there's a very good reason for the parent to accompany the child, and we will look at that case. Having said all of that, please bear in mind, the current COVID pandemic situation, right? So we're very much at the state now that we are looking at applications that essential people are going, right? When I say essential, is like the person that is actually going for a specific purpose, right? We're looking at people who, like, if you've been approved to study somewhere, you have that letter of acceptance. We're going to look at you. And if you apply with your parent, we will definitely look at the application, but we will also ask, is it really required for the parent to be there? So if, in your opinion, if the person is required to be there as a parent or guardian, you can put it in your application that this is the rationale, this is the reason why my family member should be there. Okay. Do you recommend using an agency or consultant to apply in our behalf? Uh, Honestly, like I mentioned in regards to representatives, that is entirely your prerogative, right? It is not up to the department to dictate whether or not you should be getting an agency or consultant. That is your prerogative. That is your choice to get a consultant or a representative for yourself. Like I flagged to you during the presentation, if you choose to go that route, please be vigilant, please be careful, and make sure that this person is not defrauding you, because we have seen cases of fraud. Just make sure that the person is reliable, that they know what they're doing, that they have a reputation, and that they are genuine in terms of helping you. Okay. What should I do if I want to study in a university in Canada while bringing my family with me? Should my father apply for a work visa? So it's not very clear here. So I'm going to guess, which I don't really like doing. But what should I do if I want to study in a university in Canada? So if you want to study in a university of Canada, you need to apply. While bringing my family with me, it depends, right? It really depends. I did a section on dependents, and if you go to our website, it is there as well. So let's say I don't know your age and I don't know what your family configuration is. So I'll just give you an example. You're the principal applicant and you have your wife, your principal applicant, your wife, and then your children who are beneath you, not beneath you, but you understand what I'm saying? Like they're your dependents. You can apply. Like I said, they can get an open work permit, and your children can get an open study permit, right? So they can go with you. If you want your family to go with you, should my father apply for a work visa? Your father can apply for a work visa. If you're applying together as a family unit, you will have to make the justification. You as a student who is going to Canada, why does your dad have to go and work in Canada? Why, like, what's the purpose? And put it in there. My guess is that if you want them to apply, they have the right to apply, no problem, right? But tagging it along with a study permit, you would have to provide a justification. If in the case you're here, you're applying, you're the principal applicant, your wife and your kids are going with you, and then your dad and your mom or whoever else wants to go to Canada to work or study or whatever else, they can make a separate application, and then we will review it on its own merit and basis. Okay? So if you're joining it together based on your question here, you would have to really provide a very strong justification why your dad is going with you to work, and connect it to that study permit that you have, because you are the principal applicant. And like I said, your father or your parents or whoever, they are more than welcome to apply on their own for a separate work permit or a study permit. Sorry, just give me one second. Okay. Okay. So just another idea from this very clear question is, can they apply for an open work permit? So maybe that's what you meant. Uh, Generally, they will not be eligible, like I had mentioned, for your dependents. It is generally your spouse or live-in partner, or your children who are considered dependents from a Canadian legal perspective, right? So your parents would not be considered as dependents. Mind you, I mean, there are tons of other lines of businesses, like a super visa, there's work permits, there's, that they can apply under for their own. But in regards to themselves applying as dependents under you, they would not be considered as dependents under your application. Okay, what are the factors in which you assess my file if I will not have a sponsor? Basically, if you look at the initial, let me just see if I can go back here. Oh, yes, we're not done yet, but okay. So all of these factors that I had mentioned here previously, these are the factors that we're looking at, right? If you do not have a sponsor, we want to look at where not everyone has a sponsor, and we understand that. So maybe you're working on your own and you have valid funds. That's what we would want to look at, right? It's not necessarily, I just gave that example because most of the time we're looking at people who are 18, 19 years old who are traveling, and they haven't worked. But if you have the funds and you don't have a sponsor, then just provide us with whatever information you have in regards to your funds, your own funds. Do an international student have the benefit of having scholarships granted from Canadian schools? Yes, they do. Okay. Every school is different, and you can look on websites. If you go to Edu Canada, they do have a link to scholarships. Even if you just do a Google search for Canadian scholarships for international students, every university has various types of scholarships. There are foundations that offer scholarships. There's honestly, it's a part-time job when you're applying for scholarships, because they ask you for so much information, and they want you to know all of this stuff, and it's based on grades, it's based on a family situation, sometimes it's based on countries. There's just a variety of scholarships out there. So yes, you can definitely apply for scholarships if you are international students, right? What if we have more savings rather than consistent salary, right? How will our application be considered more favorable? Well, I like your question because it is not objective. That's smart. Okay. Well, you don't know if it will be considered favorable or not. right? So if you have more savings than a consistent salary, you can tell us why that's the case, right? Explain things. Don't just let us do the guesswork, right? If you have more savings than a consistent salary, explain why you have more savings than a consistent salary. Why is your salary inconsistent? Have you been changing jobs? Has your financial situation changed? Has your work situation changed? Explain to us why your salary is not consistent, and then we can go from there. Okay? I have a son who turns 19 years old this 2020. Would he be eligible to apply as a dependent uh, if I apply for a study permit? I have a son who turns 19 years old. Be able to apply as a dependent. They will not. So they would be considered an adult. Let me think about this for a second. Okay, hold on. Okay, so that was a very good question. I was just thinking about the fact whether or not they would be considered. So like I mentioned previously, it really depends which province you're going to, right? In some provinces, you would be considered still at 18 you would be considered a minor, but at 19 everywhere you would be considered an adult, right? So they would not be considered, to answer your question, I apologize, uh, to answer your question, they would not be considered a dependent. They would be have to apply on their own. And obviously, you can, when you're applying on their own for that 19-year-old, you can say, this is the parent that is going, they've been approved in, whatever institution, and we would like our family to be together. So explain it to us why this person, but from a legal perspective, they are 19 and considered an adult, and they should apply on their own. Okay, I believe this is the last question. Is there any age constraint on student visa? I am 42, wants to go for master's study for 18, 24 months course, and I heard that age can be reason to deny visa. This is untrue, okay? This is not accurate. Most of the time, there is no technical age limit from a Canadian perspective, legal perspective, immigration perspective, that we will penalize you for your age, generally, okay? I mean, I'm just trying to think about situations like you cannot apply for grade school if you're 25, right? That's just common sense. But if you are someone who is much, we would call academics, like in the academia, in universities, we call this a mature student, right? So if you are, as you say, 42 years old or 42 years young, right? You can still apply for anywhere, like for your education, for your master's, and apply. And generally, what happens is like I mentioned to you previously, and even on the slide that we're looking at right now, we're looking at your letter of acceptance, right? We want that letter of acceptance right here from your designated learning institution, because what we're saying, we are saying that the designated learning institute has approved you to come and study at their institute. We are going to approve you. We are going to be the bridge between you and getting to Canada to go study. So basically, it's not really up to us to accept or deny you to the institute, right? The institute is the one that chooses whether or not, you're based on your grades, transcripts, work, academic experience, whether or not they're going to accept you. Once they accept you, you send us that letter and you say, yes, I'm 42 years old, but I got accepted into a master's program. Here's all the information. Uh, Please review my case and then make a decision. Okay, so if anyone, this is the last chance, guys. This is, if anyone has any more questions, I'll give you like 30 seconds to type them into Slido and I will answer them. And then that will be the end of this presentation with 10 minutes to hopefully spare. Oh, there's more here? Okay, so it's not scaling that. Is this touching? No. Okay, so there is some questions here. I will answer them quickly. My child is 9 years old. I'm just looking on this side, right, guys? So my child is 9 years old. Can I apply for my child in grade school from KSA? Yeah, you can definitely apply, but obviously make a good case as to why that grade school that you want them to go to, because it is grade school. How is it any different from the schools that are here? Maybe your child is special, and maybe they have a special program. For whatever reason, you can make a case. Okay. Can I extend my postgraduate work permit if I haven't received my permanent residency yet, and I do not have a work permit yet? Okay, so can I extend my postgraduate work permit if I haven't received my permanent residency? So this looks like a specific case, so I would say that you can apply ask your question on the web form. Sorry, I just want to tell my colleagues can you guys please put all the links on can you just put it again? Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, can I extend my postgraduate work permit if I haven't received my permanent residency? I'll be honest with you right now, Mr. Medina, is that there's a lot of things happening with the postgraduate work permit because of COVID, right? So there are contingencies in place because we understand that you may not be in Canada, right? That you may not be, meeting the requirements that we had before. So two things that I would suggest to you is please go to our website and check the postgraduate work permit. My guess is, can I extend? My guess, and please don't quote me on this, is that you could probably extend your postgraduate work permit. Okay, upon submitting the proof of financials, can we just print the statement of account from the online banking portal or request a scanned stamped copy? Yeah, either of those will work. Okay, upon submitting the proof of financials, yeah, can we just print the statement of account? Yeah, you can print the statement of account for the last 3 months from the online portal, or what's it called? Or just print them out, whatever works for you, and then submit them. Okay, can I see? Let me just go to the top again. I just want to answer everyone's questions. Okay. My wife is a student and I'm sponsoring her. So I'm going to stop the questions at 12. Okay, guys? I know people have. Okay. Okay, let me just see. Okay. These are at the top. These are the top as recent, right? Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm just going to read the questions. And student loans, I don't think that's, Ghalia, can you explain what student loans you're talking about? Okay. If there are more inquiries about visa, can we call the Canadian Embassy or anyone at the embassy? Unfortunately, you cannot, because I'm sure you can understand the volume would be too much. So please go to the web form and ask your questions. What if I have a different form of assets such as stocks, crypto, in terms of funds? Will it affect my chances? I don't know if it will affect your chances. And because like I mentioned previously, we look at your application holistically. We will not only look at your funds, we will look at family configuration, what type of work you're doing. I'm guessing if you have stocks and crypto, you are probably out of school and have a bachelor's already. So we would look at your academic and your work experience, and then we will make a decision on your and like I said though, like fixed assets versus liquid assets, liquid is easier. And with stocks, obviously you can liquidate your stocks, but I don't know, like if you have index investments and stuff, it might not be as easy to do that. But anyways, okay, that's a discussion for another day. My child is 9 years old. I've done that question. Can I send okay, I've done that. Upon submitting the proof of funds, can we just print the statement of account? Okay, I think, how long is the processing of study permits? What is the application processing times? Okay, Where can I find information about student loans? Is it possible to apply for study even if I'm visit visa here in Saudi? Yeah, you can. Okay. I mean, you're gonna have to tell us, this is your situation that we're gonna see that you're visiting, but you can apply for sure. Right? What is application processing time? The website mentions 8 weeks. Is it the same during COVID-19 as well? Where can I find? Okay. If my mom will apply for a study permit as a healthcare assistant, can she apply for a PR after that? Okay. If my mom will apply for a study permit as a healthcare assistant, can she apply for a PR after that? She used to be a nurse. She stopped working since 2003. Yeah, so she can definitely apply. Okay, so it's a good question, and I think you're alluding to the fact that we've made a expedited line for healthcare workers in Canada to become PRs, right? I would say that this is for people who are healthcare assistants who are currently in Canada. You can definitely apply, and I think at this point, we look favorably at healthcare assistants. And obviously, the person who is going as a healthcare assistant, you will have to apply for a work permit first if you want to go through that line of business, or apply through the PR stream, and either express entry or whatever other stream that you think is fit for your situation. Can she become a PR eventually? Hypothetically, yes, she can become a PR eventually. Okay, I got rejected twice. Okay, is getting a work permit after studying in Canada easier than merely applying for a work permit? Okay, so this is the last question that I'm answering, guys. Is getting a work permit after studying in Canada easier than merely applying for a work permit? Sorry, I have to read this again. Is getting a work permit after studying in Canada easier than merely applying for a work permit? Okay, so I'm gonna venture a guess because I apologize because maybe I didn't understand the question properly. Is getting a work permit after studying in Canada? So I'm assuming you got a study permit and then went to Canada and then you applied for a work permit. Is it easier? I mean, if you're in Canada and you have a good reputation and you didn't skip school, can you apply for a work permit? Sure, and chances are of getting it pretty high. I would say pretty high, right? Because you've demonstrated that you are reliable and you haven't broken any laws or legislations. So I would say, yeah, you could apply for a work permit. Is it easier than merely applying for a work permit? Where? In Canada? Here? Uh, okay. So hold on, my colleagues are saying something. Okay, so look, I'm just going to tell you what I told everyone at the beginning about postgraduate work permits. Okay, apply for a study permit, get your study permit, and then finish your studies in Canada, and then get your work permit, and then apply for your PR, and then eventually, hopefully, your citizenship. Okay, so that is the last question with 1 minute to spare. Please copy all the links that are there. Those are everything that we mentioned during the presentation. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend. Thank you to my team because I couldn't have done this without them. And if you need any more information, please visit our websites. They're all on here. There's tons and tons of information for your perusal. And thank you again for attending. And hopefully we might see you on the next one if there is an interest for that. Have a great rest of your day and take care.